Welcome back, fellow internet adventurers. Get ready for another wild ride through Reddit's strangest stories. We're diving deep into the internet's quirkiest corners. Grab your popcorn and join us on this adventure. Don't forget to hit subscribe and like. Let's get started. I'm a 32-year-old male. I was married to my ex-wife, Sophie, 30, female, for 2 years. Sophie and I were lovebirds, and even as I share this story, it still surprises me that she cheated on me after everything we'd been through. Sophie and I weren't strangers when we started dating. As children, we grew up in the same neighborhood and were very familiar with each other. Sadly, when I was about 15, her parents moved and we lost contact. Many years later, we coincidentally bumped into each other as adults. Even as a kid who didn't know much about love, I knew I had a crush on Sophie, and when we reconnected as adults, the fire rekindled. We talked for a while and exchanged contact information. Luckily, Sophie was single at the time, and after hanging out for weeks, I asked her to be my girlfriend. She said yes. We dated for a year before getting married. I know it might sound simple, but I knew I loved Sophie and felt complete. When we married, many things had changed about her, but she was still the intelligent, witty, and energetic Sophie I knew as a child. She became a junior high school teacher, while I worked as a mechanic in an automobile shop. Between the two of us, Sophie was the more intelligent, and she had a thing for smart people. Personally, I liked everyone I met. I wasn't particularly seeking out highly intelligent people the way Sophie did. That was our biggest difference. When we were first catching up and hanging out, I used to feel like I was out of her league, but as we grew deeply in love, I became more secure, though I always put in extra effort to keep her happy. Our marriage was fun, sweet, and full of laughter. She made being married feel peaceful. We barely fought or argued. When we were dating, Sophie told me she hated being yelled at, so she made me promise I would never raise my voice at her, no matter how angry I was. I promised, and she did the same. So, even if we had disagreements, they sounded like intense conversations. No raised voices. When it came to children, Sophie and I were on the same page. We didn't think it made sense to wait years before having kids. I prefer to have a child a year or two after marriage, so our child would grow with us, rather than having my first in old age. So, immediately after we married, we started trying to conceive. There were times Sophie would miss her period and think she was pregnant, only for it to come the next day. In our first year, she got pregnant once, but she miscarried after a month. It was devastating. We had waited for months, and just when we finally got pregnant, we lost the baby. After the first miscarriage, we took a break before trying again. Unfortunately, the same thing happened, another miscarriage in the 5th week. She woke up one morning bleeding heavily, and the hospital confirmed it. It took a mental toll on us. For months, we couldn't even talk about trying again. I did my best to support her and be strong for us. Eventually, we moved on. I knew she was going through a lot emotionally, so I decided not to bring up having a child until she seemed fully recovered from the losses. Our marriage bounced back. Even after things felt normal again, I treated Sophie like a queen and did everything I could for her. Aside from going to school to teach, she didn't have to do much at home. I cooked for months, cleaned the house, did the laundry, mowed the lawn, shopped for groceries, and even made her special meals. I wanted her to feel loved because she sometimes said she was bad luck, or that something was wrong with her. I knew those thoughts came from the miscarriages, so I reassured her constantly. About 4 months after the second loss, I was cleaning the house one weekend when Sophie came to me with tears in her eyes. I was scared something terrible had happened. Then she told me she was pregnant. I was over the moon. I hadn't expected that news so soon. Quietly, I was scared she'd lose the baby again, but when she said the pregnancy was already over 8 weeks, I was on cloud 9. She hadn't even known. Her period was late, but she thought it was hormonal. No morning sickness, nothing obvious. It took us by surprise. Later that week, we saw a doctor to discuss how to reduce the risk of another loss, and she was advised not to stress. I knew I had to step up even more. I did everything I could to make her comfortable. I didn't want anything to cause another miscarriage. Most importantly, I didn't want her to go through that pain again. When the scan showed we were having a boy, I was thrilled. I'd always want a son first, then a daughter. After the scan, I started shopping for baby items. Every day, I prayed for Sophie and the baby. I loved watching the baby grow in her belly and spent hours leaning on her bump, talking to him. It felt magical. In her 3rd month, Sophie said she wanted to take a break from work to focus on her health and the baby. I fully supported her financially and was glad she was serious about her health. Fast forward to the 6th month, everything changed. One evening after dinner, Sophie was so exhausted she dozed off on the couch. I covered her with blankets to keep her comfortable. Her phone was on the table with the dishes. As I was clearing up, her phone chimed. I ignored it at first, but the notifications kept coming. I decided to silence it so it wouldn't disturb her sleep. Her phone had a fingerprint lock, which I could unlock with her fingerprint. I saw the messages were from a contact saved with a single heart emoji. My heart sank when I opened the conversation. The man kept asking, "How's my baby doing today?" and other questions about her health and the pregnancy. I reread the messages, trying to see if he was a doctor. After digging more, I realized he wasn't. At the same time, I checked her Instagram. The same man had messaged her there, and even sent a photo of his private parts. That's how I discovered they'd also been communicating on Instagram. Through those chats, I learned Sophie had been cheating on me. I want to know who he was and what she saw in him. On his Instagram profile, I found he was a scientist. I couldn't believe it. It took me the whole night to accept I wasn't dreaming. The most heartbreaking part was realizing I had been caring for another man's child, working my butt off to make sure the baby would be born into a comfortable home. That night, I packed a few clothes and drove to my friend's house. I couldn't stand to look at Sophie after realizing she'd been playing me. To make it worse, the man knew she was married. He'd occasionally ask if I was taking good care of her and the baby, and she'd reply with something like, "Yeah, trying." Reading them made me furious. I'd taken full responsibility for the house, cooked her favorite meals at odd hours, massaged her neck and feet, and dealt with her mood swings. It was cruel of her to cheat on me and lie about the baby's paternity. Around 3 in the morning, Sophie woke up and noticed I wasn't home. She called to ask where I was. I replied coldly that I'd gone to the shop to handle unfinished business and would return in the morning, but I didn't. I stayed away for 4 days. She began to panic, called repeatedly, and even went to my workplace, where they told her I had taken the week off to sort out family issues. During those 4 days, I created a fake Instagram account to dig deeper into Sophie's affair partner. I learned he had been a scientist for years and had even won a prestigious award. On the 2nd day, I found out he was married to a woman named Owen, a psychologist, and they had 2 kids. I tracked down his wife's information and reached out to her on Instagram. I didn't beat around the bush. I told her that her husband was having an affair with my wife and sent evidence. When I first saw Sophie's chats, I'd taken photos, so I attached them. She replied the next day and set up a meeting. We met on the 4th day, the same day I returned home. When we met, she kept saying she couldn't believe her husband was cheating. I assured her he was. She looked through the screenshots and was so heartbroken she nearly passed out when I told her my wife was pregnant by her husband. After our meeting, she said she would confront him, and I told her I'd confront Sophie. I returned home that evening. When Sophie saw me, she ran to me. I told her I wanted a paternity test. She was shocked and asked why. I said I wanted to be sure the baby was mine. She laughed and called me ridiculous, refusing the test and insisting the baby was mine. I knew she was being manipulative. If I didn't know the truth, her performance might have convinced me. That day, I raised my voice at her for the first time in years. She started crying, accusing me of calling her a cheater and saying she couldn't believe I'd do that after everything we'd been through. I watched her cry and use emotional blackmail, but I still insisted on a paternity test. I had printed copies of the chat screenshots. I showed them to her. She was stunned. After a moment, she claimed she had only been flirting and that nothing physical had happened. Her excuses were ridiculous. I told her that any man calling her baby my baby wasn't a joke and that I needed the paternity results. After hours of arguing, she finally agreed. We did the paternity test. The results confirmed the baby wasn't mine. By then, Sophie realized there was no point pretending. She started begging for forgiveness and lied that she'd used a sperm donor and didn't know the father. I knew she was lying, but was too angry and exhausted to argue. I left her at the hospital, went home, and packed what I needed. I was still packing when she returned and tried to stop me. I was at my peak anger and didn't want to do something I'd regret, so I left. No matter how I try to explain how betrayed and heartbroken I was, words don't cover it. As I was leaving, Sophie became dramatic and started calling me names. I left anyway, and we didn't communicate for a week. She called every day and sent voicemails, crying, shouting, begging. It was like she had multiple personalities. 2 days ago, her parents called and hurled abuse at me. They called me a deadbeat and said I was the worst father any child could have. I had no energy for more drama. I wanted to quietly divorce Sophie without telling anyone about her infidelity. But even after she destroyed our marriage with her own hands, she still told lies about me to her parents, friends, and anyone who would listen. I can't stand getting calls from people attacking me when I know Sophie is the one at fault. Her parents have even threatened me with dire consequences if anything happens to their daughter or unborn child. Even though the child isn't mine, it's still a life. I don't want the baby to suffer, so I'm keeping quiet until she delivers. I'm so sorry, Opie. That's incredibly heavy. Taking time away was a smart move. You might have done something you'd regret. What was she thinking? Was she going to have the baby and pretend I was the father while seeing another man behind my back? How long had she been seeing him? What if the earlier pregnancies weren't mine either? Heartbreaking. Her parents are delusional, just like her. They're so desperate for a baby, they don't care where it came from. I'm not responsible for Sophie's choices. If anything happens to the baby, that's on her, not me. Update 1. Hello everyone, and thank you for your comments. Someone mentioned that when I said I wanted to divorce Sophie quietly, I wasn't joking. If you knew what I've been through since Sophie's miscarriages, you'd understand why I don't want more drama. I've had enough problems for one marriage. Sometimes I wonder if Sophie had been cheating since her first year. Some of you said marrying in a year was too fast. I believe knowing her since childhood made a year of dating feel sufficient. Anyway, that's in the past. Last week, I made a vague public post on Facebook implying that Sophie had broken my heart and ruined our plans. A Facebook friend of Sophie's reached out. He's a fellow teacher at her school and said he needed to tell me something about her. We met, and he told me Sophie had been having affairs with some of her students' fathers. I didn't believe him until he showed me a short video he'd secretly recorded a while back. According to him, Sophie had a thing for the fathers of the most intelligent kids in her class and would practically throw herself at them. He said he told me because he wanted to help me dodge a bullet. In addition, he said the school was aware of Sophie's terrible behavior, which is why she was fired shortly after her pregnancy. I was shocked to learn she had been fired months before she told me she had quit. That meant that the whole time I was struggling to care for Sophie while neglecting myself, she had been cheating on me. It was the only explanation because her income didn't change or drop. Every morning, she would dress for work and return around her usual time. At noon, she would even come home and tell me how much fun she had in class with the kids, all lies. It would be an understatement to say I felt used. I had never been lied to, used, or manipulated like that by anyone. After everything I heard, I knew it was over between Sophie and me. Hearing all of it stirred up a wave of anger I didn't know I had. Meanwhile, I contacted a lawyer to start the divorce process. After we divorce, I'm not sure what I'll do next. I'll post another update once I'm done with Sophie and all her drama. I look forward to your comments on this. Yes, the leaving work story makes sense now. She was actually fired. And this guy told you a few months too late. Sorry, Opie. It seems this bullet didn't miss you after all. I'm sorry she used you like this. Update 2. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for the encouragement. Like many of you said, if I took Sophie back, I'd be shooting myself in the foot. I no longer love her, and I feel no pity for someone who could do something so terrible while I worked as hard as possible to be a good, supportive husband to her and the child I believed was mine. She could kill me in my sleep. I'm not exaggerating. A woman like Sophie is capable of anything. I finally confronted her infuriating parents who kept calling. In fact, I dropped the screenshots of her conversations with her affair partner in their WhatsApp family group chat, and I sent a long voice note explaining everything in case anyone had trouble reading. I posted the screenshots in the group chat before confronting Sophie one last time. I told her I knew she had been sleeping with multiple men and that the supposed father of her baby was a scientist. The look on her face showed she didn't expect me to know that. She had already grown thin after days of crying, thinking, and begging me to talk to her. I thought she would keep begging, but she realized the act was over. She became defensive and admitted she was having an affair with a scientist. She even told me she did it because she wanted good genes for her baby, not my weak and dumb genes. I never believed she would say that to me, but she did. What she didn't know was that I had contacted her affair partner through his wife and told them I had learned Sophie was a serial cheater. Sophie showed no remorse because she expected hefty child support. Unfortunately for her, since the affair partner wanted to fix things with his wife, he also insisted on a paternity test. When the results came back, he wasn't a father either. Sophie had slept with multiple partners during that time. Me, the scientist, and 2 other men, the fathers of her students, so she couldn't tell who the baby's father was. 2 weeks after her affair partner found out he wasn't the father, my lawyer sent her the divorce papers. She refused to sign it first, saying I had ruined her life and therefore had to stick with her. Very funny. On the other hand, when her parents learned she didn't know who the father was, they disowned her in shame. Eventually, she signed the divorce papers, and were no longer together. She tried to play a smart one on me and lost everything, including her family. Now she'll have to raise that baby on her own. I wish her luck finding the father. Thanks to everyone who suggested contacting the affair partner in my last update. Thank you all. Oh, you ruined her life? The audacity. At least she'll have the baby she always wanted. But at what cost? She lost everything else. What do you think? Next up, no more Mr. Nice Guy. Cheated on in a 4-year relationship. I'll start with some context. My girlfriend, 24, female, and I, 24, male, have been together for over 4 years. When we got together, she was still recovering mentally and physically from a very abusive relationship the year before, and I helped her through it. She became extremely attached to me, and I to her, and the thought of her cheating on me seemed impossible. Throughout our relationship, we talked many times about cheating, and we agreed it never solves problems. Communication should be the solution. I believed her, as she never showed interest in other guys when I was around. In the last year, she became more distant and started doing things I didn't know she was into. Maybe she didn't either. Mainly, she started going to clubs with her best friend, saying she just wanted to dance. I told her, and she knew, that kind of fun isn't my thing, and I didn't want to go just to be her bodyguard. At first, I didn't think much of it. I trusted she or her friend could handle guys flirting. But after a couple of weeks, while we were looking at something on her phone, she got a message from someone named Chris. I think, name change for privacy. The I think part sounded off, and I asked about it. Apparently, some random guy told her she looked nice and asked for her number, and she gave it to him. Her excuse was that she was drunk. That's when I started getting suspicious. I confronted her, since I thought she went there just to dance with her friend. Naive, I know, but that's how much I trusted her. It turned into a huge fight in which she snapped that I was too jealous and controlling. My argument was that she has no volition when drunk, and neither she nor her friend could necessarily do anything if a couple of guys got them drunk or drugged them and took advantage. We somewhat recovered in the following months, but I could still feel her resentment. She also started saying I was judging her anytime she shared something sensitive. Around this time, I began secretly checking her messages. She kept talking to that guy, but it wasn't much, mostly idle chatter from him every few weeks. Fast forward to a few days ago. It had been a long time since I checked her messages. I thought the relationship was going well. I was investing time and effort. She still seemed distant, but she said she was stressed and tired from university and work. I believed her, as I was also stressed and tired, though everyone has different thresholds. One night, while she was sleeping, I looked through her messages to see what was going on. One of the latest chats was with that Chris, I think, from the previous night. When I thought she went to bed early, at 3 a.m., she was sending him pictures of herself at the club, saying she was drunk. I was furious, but kept quiet. I checked other chats and found one with another random guy with a strange name. Their conversation seemed somewhat intimate, Not sexting, but not far from it. I scrolled to the beginning, 3 months earlier. He'd gotten her number after meeting her on the street. A few days later, out of the blue, she told him not to tell anyone about what they were doing in bed. That was the moment I snapped.